Hi, I just want to touch bases with you for 1 second before the show starts. This show spotlights Glen Campbell, and it was filmed one day before it was announced that he had finished his long journey with Alzheimer's and had passed on. I just wanted to give you the update in case you haven't heard, because I do mention at the end of the show that he's still alive. So please enjoy the show, and as I say at the end, us Glen Campbell fans will always cherish his memory. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here's me. Hi there, it's great to see you. Thanks for stopping by today. I really appreciate it. I'm John Merriman, and this is your Tuesday morning guitar song. If he was born in a big city to rich parents, he probably would have been called a child prodigy. He would have been fawned over, he would have been marveled at, and he would probably have been sent to the best music teachers money could buy so he could have an easy ascendancy to the highest levels of the music business. But that was not the case. He was born on a sharecropper's cotton farm in way out there, Arkansas. Glen Campbell was the 8th oldest of 12 children born to John and Carrie Campbell. They were poor cotton farmers just trying to survive in the dry land of cotton country. Getting out of diapers was probably the only graduation ceremony that any of those kids would ever see, and that meant they could go work in the fields. Times were really tough, and they had very little. The kids had to sleep 4 to a bed, and Carrie tried to feed the family from the garden, and then during the day she would strap on a cotton sack and go work in the fields. What they did have out there in Arkansas was probably priceless. They had their family, they had their church, and they had music. John Campbell was an incredibly musical man. They say he could play almost any musical instrument. And whether they were working in the fields or spending all day at church on Sunday, those kids were singing and harmonizing together. They were 100 miles away from anything that resembled a music teacher. They had to learn music with their ears and with their hearts. And they were always singing and trying to pick out the latest tune that they heard on their battery-powered transistor radio from the Grand Ole Opry. Well, when Glen was 8 years old, he got his first guitar. It was a 3/4 size guitar, and this is where that child prodigy stuff comes in. He showed an incredible, almost eerie talent at guitar at 8 years old. He could listen to any song once and then just play it back immediately, totally correctly. And he developed very good mechanics at playing guitar very early on. Well, he had an uncle, and his uncle's name was Boo. It was John's brother, and Boo took Glen under his wing. And Boo would take Glen to the African American churches around the area to listen to their music so Glen could expand his musical horizons. And then when Glen was 15 years old, him and Boo took off together. They headed west, and they ended up in cowboy country of Wyoming. And because Glen was a phenomenon at guitar and Boo could play, they played in country bands at night, and they dug ditches during the day. Well, this was all just a little too much for 15-year-old Glen, so he took off for Houston, where he stayed with some of his brothers who had settled there. Now, Glen had another uncle, and this uncle lived in Albuquerque, and he had a country band and a little TV show in Albuquerque. So Glen, at 17 years old, took off for Albuquerque to live with that uncle. And that uncle hired him immediately to be in his country band because of his great guitar playing. Well, he was 17 and he got a girl pregnant right away, and he got married right away, and he worked in his uncle's country band until he was 22. And then he got a divorce, and then he got married again, and then he headed off for Los Angeles. Well, back then, Glen Campbell was an incredibly good-looking guy, and he had such a wonderful country personality. It didn't take him long to get a job at a music publishing company recording songwriter demos. And word started to spread quickly about this incredible guitar player in town. Music producers started calling Glen and asked him to play on their records. And soon Glen Campbell became an A-list studio musician in Los Angeles. He couldn't read or write music. He'd show up to a gig at a studio and they'd give him the music and he'd look at it and he'd turn it upside down and he'd fold it up and he'd put it in his pocket. Then he'd listen to the song once and he would nail it. He would play it perfectly and always add something incredibly special to it. By the time he was 24, he had played on 580 albums for other people. And also during this time, he had a small record contract with a small record label. And he was releasing some of his own music on this record label, mostly instrumental stuff. And it was really going nowhere and he wasn't selling very much. And then one day he was driving in his car and he heard the song Gentle on My Mind by John Hartford. And he goes, oh my goodness, I've got to record that song. And he did. And he released it. And then Capitol Records heard it. They picked it up and they released it. And it became Glen Campbell's first big hit. And that started the Glen Campbell that we know today as being that pop country superstar with hit after hit. That was really his second profession. He was a very well-to-do and very successful studio musician before that. Well, he became a superstar, and life did not get easy for him, as you might know. He spent over a decade upside down in very serious substance abuse, failed marriages, and then, with the help and love of his fourth and current wife, Tammy, he became clean and sober in the early 1990s and started a second phase of his profession. And as you probably know also, Glen Campbell was diagnosed with Alzheimer's a number of years ago, and today he is in the final phases of Alzheimer's, living in a care facility. All his fans, of which I am one, will always cherish the memory of Glen Campbell. And today, I'd like to honor him in any way I can by being the topic of your Tuesday morning fun fact. Here's your Tuesday morning fun fact. Earlier this year, I did a show on the Beach Boys, and I got a lot of questions concerning this issue. Glen Campbell often said that he was a member of the Beach Boys for a while. And during his concerts, he would always play a little Beach Boy medley, just for old time's sake. Now, here's what was really going on. Glen Campbell, of course, was a member of the loose affiliation of A-list studio musicians known as the Wrecking Crew. And they played on just about everybody's album back in the early 60s in Los Angeles, including the Beach Boys. Then, in December of 1964, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys decided he did not want to tour anymore. He was still in the band, but he did not want to go on the road. So, the Beach Boys asked Glen if he would fill in for Brian on the road, and Glen said yes. So from December of 64 to about March of 65, 4 or 5 months, Glen was on the road with the Beach Boys. He was not an official member of the band, and I don't know if he was asked to be in the band and said no, or if he was never asked to be in the band, but he stayed until March of 65, and then Bruce Johnson came to take his place, and Bruce actually joined the band as an official Beach Boy. So Glen Campbell was never really an official Beach Boy. He was more kind of a beach buddy, I guess. And there's your Tuesday morning fun fact. For your Tuesday morning guitar song, let's go back to 1968. If there's such a thing as an immortal pop song, I think this is it. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. If the Spirit moves you and you have a second, please like the show or like the page if you're watching on Facebook. Share the show on your social media or send it to a Glen Campbell fan. You are my word of mouth, and I appreciate all you do. Thank you. So, please come back and see me next week, and remember, you're never ready for your day without a song in your heart. Bye now.